A locked door hides a lost civilization's entire history, and we have the key but cannot turn it. This is the profound mystery of undeciphered ancient scripts. By the end of this journey, you will discover 20 of these silent codes and understand the lost worlds they protect. We will examine symbols carved in stone on remote islands and markings pressed into clay in the world's first cities, each guarding secrets that could redefine our past. What stories of forgotten kingdoms and everyday lives are waiting within these unreadable lines? The silent history of humanity asks for a listener. What forgotten voice from the past would you most want to hear cracking these ancient codes demands a unique kind of intellectual archaeology. The famous stone offered a perfect parallel text, a clear translation guide sitting right beside the unknown script. For the vast majority of these silent writings, no such guide exists. This leaves researchers facing a monumental puzzle where even the basic rules are a mystery. The first and greatest hurdle is understanding what kind of writing system you are even looking at. Are these symbols representing individual sounds, like the letters in our alphabet? Do they stand for whole syllables, or perhaps complete words or ideas, like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs or modern Chinese characters? Or is it a complex hybrid system, mixing different principles? Without a bilingual inscription or a clear link to a language we already understand, experts are not just translators, they are cryptographers working in the dark. They have the encoded message, but the original language itself is lost. The process becomes a meticulous search for patterns. Scholars count how often certain symbols appear. Looking for the equivalents of common letters like E or T, they examine the order of symbols, searching for repetitions that might hint at grammar, like verb endings or royal titles. They study where the inscription was found, what objects it was on, desperately seeking any contextual clue about its purpose. All of this detective work is made infinitely harder by the cruel passage of time. Many of these scripts survive only as brief fragments, a handful of symbols on a broken pot or a weathered stone. It is like trying to reconstruct an entire novel from a single, torn page. So what does it truly take to move from seeing shapes to hearing a lost voice? Our journey to a remote Pacific island provides a breathtaking example of this challenge in its form. Far out in the Pacific Ocean, on one of the most isolated islands on Earth, stands a silent forest of stone giants. The massive statues of Easter Island gaze inland with an eternal, unknowable expression. But their famous faces are only part of the mystery. Scattered across the island are wooden tablets and ceremonial objects inscribed with a strange, fluid script known as. Discovered in the 19th century, these glyphs resemble a beautiful, artistic script, with figures of birds, fish, plants, and geometric shapes all arranged in a unique boustrophedon pattern. That means the lines of text reverse direction with each new row, like an ox plowing a field, turning at the end of each furrow to start the next one in the opposite direction. It is a complex, deliberate system of writing, yet today, not a single person on Earth can read it. The knowledge was catastrophically lost in the 1860s, when slaving raids and introduced diseases devastated the population, taking the last fluent readers and the oral traditions needed to interpret the tablets with them. Now, researchers are left with only 24 surviving wooden artifacts, many damaged or burned. They face the ultimate cryptographic nightmare. Is a true writing system that records history and genealogy, or is it a set of mnemonic symbols meant to be chanted by a priestly class? Does it contain the island's own origin story, or accounts of their incredible transoceanic voyages? The elegant glyphs remain a locked diary of a resilient culture, its stories forever hovering just beyond our grasp. This puzzle of a lost voice from a remote island could not be more different from our next enigma, which comes from the dense, urban heart of one of humanity's first great civilizations. Etched onto small stone seals, clay tablets, and fragments of pottery from the immense cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, the Indus Valley script represents one of the world's oldest undeciphered writing systems. These symbols date back over 4,000 years, to a time when these metropolises boasted advanced urban planning, sophisticated drainage, and vast trade networks. With over 400 distinct signs, the script appears on thousands of artifacts, suggesting widespread use. Yet this abundance is also the source of immense frustration. Most inscriptions are painfully short, often just 4 or 5 characters in length, like finding only the subject lines of emails from an entire civilization. This brevity makes cracking the code nearly impossible. Are these glyphs logographic, each representing a whole word or concept? Could they encode a Proto-Dravidian language, linking to linguistic families still spoken in parts of India today? Or, in perhaps the most controversial theory, are they not a full writing system at all, but a complex set of linguistic symbols, like clan markers or religious icons? Even the basic direction of writing, left to right or right to left, is still debated. The lack of a stone for the Indus Valley, a long bilingual text that could act as a key, has stalled progress for decades. We can only wonder at the purpose of the beautiful soapstone seals, often carved with animals like unicorns and bulls. Were they used for stamping trade goods, for administrative record-keeping, or for marking religious offerings? The silent, elegant symbols of the Indus Valley guard the complete internal story of a sophisticated, peaceful civilization that flourished for centuries and then mysteriously declined, leaving behind its cities and its unreadable mail. This urban enigma, born in the crowded streets of a Bronze Age metropolis, stands in stark contrast to the next mystery we encounter, which was not meant for city squares at all, but for the profound and silent darkness of a tomb. The tragedy is that its very discovery coincided with its deepest loss. When European missionaries arrived in the 1860s, they found these inscribed wooden tablets in the possession of local elders. Viewing them as pagan artifacts, they pressured the islanders to destroy them. Many tablets were burned, used as firewood, or simply vanished. Only a handful, perhaps 24, were spared, often hidden away or taken by visiting ships as curiosities. This physical destruction was compounded by a cultural catastrophe. The same era saw devastating raids that took many islanders away and introduced illnesses brought profound hardship to the community. The knowledgeable elders, the last who understood the chants and the meanings behind the glyphs, were gone within a generation. The living thread of memory was severed, leaving behind only the beautiful, silent symbols. Linguists today face a profound question with this scant evidence. Are these intricate glyphs a true, full writing system capable of recording any spoken thought of the language? Or are they a form of proto-writing, a sophisticated mnemonic device? This second possibility suggests the glyphs served as prompts for a trained class of reciters, who would use the symbols to recall vast genealogical lines, creation myths, or navigational chants from oral tradition, but would not read them word for word like a modern book. The unique boustrophedon pattern, where every other line is written upside down, adds to the mystery. Some researchers see this as a sign of high complexity, a space-saving technique for a dense script. Others wonder if it reflects a ceremonial or ritualistic purpose, a visual representation of a sacred chant's rhythm. The glyphs themselves, depicting frigate birds, sweet potato plants, and human figures in postures that might suggest action, offer tantalizing but silent clues. Could one sequence tell of the incredible ocean voyage that brought the first settlers to this remote island? Might another record the names and deeds of the ancestors, connecting the living to the very builders of the towering? We look at the serene faces of the stone giants and the elegant curves of the glyphs, knowing they are part of the same story, yet the chapter that links them is written in a language we can see but cannot hear. This profound silence, born from isolation and loss, finds a strange echo thousands of miles away, not on a remote island, but deep within the arid heart of a vast desert, where another script guards the secrets of a vanished kingdom. While the stone giants stand in isolation, another early script emerged from the shadow of a neighbor. In the rugged highlands of ancient Iran, around 3100 BCE, Administrators pressed styluses into wet clay, creating the Proto-Elamite script. This system is one of the world's oldest undeciphered writings, born at nearly the same time as the earliest cuneiform in Mesopotamia. With over 1,000 distinct signs, it represents a sophisticated attempt to record information, yet its voice has been silent for 5,000 years. The tablets themselves offer a clue to their purpose. They are not epic poems or royal decrees. They are administrative records, lists of commodities like grain, livestock, and textiles. We are essentially looking at the ancient bookkeeping of one of the region's first complex societies. The script is filled with numerical signs and abstract symbols, a complex code for managing an economy. Scholars have made some progress here, identifying certain signs for numbers and measures, like a specific symbol for a certain quantity of barley. But this is where the understanding stops. We can sometimes see what was being counted, but we have no idea who was counting it, or for which city or temple. The underlying language these signs were meant to represent is a complete mystery. It likely does not relate to the later, known Elamite language, making it a linguistic isolate on clay. The graphical style of the signs suggests inspiration from Mesopotamian proto-cuneiform, as if the idea of writing spread, but the local scribes then invented their own entire system to suit their own unknown tongue. This makes Proto-Elamite a double puzzle. It is a complex writing system adopted and adapted for a society we can barely name, used solely, it seems, to track wealth and resources. What do these dry ledgers hide? They could reveal the inner workings of early state formation, how a society organized its labor, distributed its goods, and exerted control. They are the silent spreadsheets of a forgotten bureaucracy, holding data on a kingdom's strength with no header row to explain it. From these humble clay tablets of accountants, we shift to a script meant for eternity, carved not for ledgers, but for the glory of kings and the walls of sacred spaces. A world away from the ledgers of Proto-Elamite, a different kind of record was carved into stone under the dense canopy of, in the humid isthmus of around 500 CE, a civilization we call the Olmec raised monuments that bore a sophisticated and beautiful script. Known today as the Isthmian script, its glyphs are a cascade of intricate faces, hands, animals, and abstract symbols, each one a small masterpiece of stone carving. The most breathtaking example is the La Mohara stela, a towering slab of stone that presents a full-length portrait of an elaborately dressed ruler, his gaze fixed forward, while over 400 of these glyphs flow in columns beside him. It is a complete statement in stone, a potential biography or a record of cosmic events, standing silent for centuries. Researchers believe this script records an early form of the languages, and its structure appears to be. This means it cleverly mixes whole word signs, or logograms, with symbols that represent syllables, creating a flexible and efficient system not unlike the later, famous Maya script. In fact, some scholars see Isthmian as a crucial missing link, a bridge between the earlier symbolic traditions of the Olmec and the full flowering of Maya writing. There have been bold attempts at decipherment, proposing that the text on the La Mohara stela recounts the rise and fall of a ruler, noting important calendar dates, military conflicts, and ritual events. Yet these readings remain controversial, not universally accepted by the academic community. The greatest obstacle is the heartbreakingly small body of evidence. Only a handful of monuments bearing this script have survived. With so few texts to compare, it is nearly impossible to confirm the meaning of a sign, to see how it changes in different contexts, or to fully grasp the grammar it follows. We are left staring at a stone page from a lost library, a page that is stunningly complete in itself, but represents just one volume of a vanished collection. What epic tales of dynasty and divinity, what records of celestial events or descriptions of sacred rituals are captured in those 400 glyphs? The stone holds the story of a king and his world, a narrative in plain sight that we can only describe but cannot yet read. This monumental silence of, etched so grandly in stone, gives way to a script of an entirely different character, one pressed into humble clay by a culture whose very name remains a modern mystery. While the Isthmian script stands as a solitary monument, the story of writing on the ancient island of Crete is one of layered mystery. Long before the famous Linear A and Linear B scripts were used in the island's great palaces, an even older system was inscribing its history. Known today as Cretan Hieroglyphs, this collection of pictorial signs began appearing around 2100 BCE. These are not the familiar symbols of Egypt, but a unique and local invention. Carved into small stone seals, pressed into clay ceilings to secure storage jars, and inscribed on a limited number of clay tablets, the glyphs present a world in miniature. We see delicate flowers, sharp arrows, stylized human faces, and intricate geometric shapes. Each symbol is a clean, elegant picture, yet together they form a code that has resisted cracking for over 3,500 years. With a repertoire of over 100 distinct signs, scholars believe it likely represents a logo-syllabic system. This means some signs stood for entire words or ideas, while others represented syllables, combining to record the sounds of a spoken language. But what language did it record? The prevailing theory points to a pre-Greek tongue often called Minoan, named for the legendary King Minos, a language that left no other trace and was eventually replaced. The context of the finds tells a practical story. These hieroglyphic inscriptions are not grand historical narratives. They appear on administrative objects, on seals that denoted ownership or authority, and on tablets that likely listed commodities. This suggests the script was a tool of the emerging palace bureaucracies, a system for controlling resources, tracking goods, and managing the complex economy of early Bronze Age Crete. So what sparked this invention? Was it an independent creation, born from the needs of a society growing in complexity and trade? Or was it inspired by distant contact with the writing systems of Egypt or Mesopotamia, adapted entirely for a new language and purpose? The hieroglyphs represent the first known attempt in the Aegean to capture speech in a durable, visual form. They mark the moment a brilliant culture began to keep official records, to move from memory alone to written account. Yet the very system they pioneered would soon be transformed, leading to an even more pervasive and equally enigmatic script that would come to define Minoan civilization. The elegant hieroglyphs of Crete would soon evolve into a more streamlined and practical form. By roughly 1800 BCE, the scribes in the bustling palaces of Knossos were pressing a new script into soft clay tablets. This is Linear A, a flowing, linear script of around 85 distinct signs, a system that would become the administrative heartbeat of the Minoan civilization for centuries. We can recognize its basic structure because it was the direct ancestor of the later, deciphered Linear B script used by the Mycenaean Greeks. The two scripts share many identical signs for syllables, like T or Na. This gives scholars a profound but frustrating advantage. We can often sound out the words written in Linear A, pronouncing the syllables they represent. Yet the language those sounds form remains utterly incomprehensible. It is like having a perfectly clear audio recording of a conversation in a language no one on Earth has ever heard. The Minoan language encoded by Linear A does not belong to any known language family. It is a linguistic isolate, a unique voice from the Bronze Age Aegean that left no descendants. This creates a surreal situation where we can read the inventory lists but understand almost nothing of the world they describe. The tablets themselves, preserved by chance fires that bake the clay, are almost entirely economic records. They list commodities in meticulous detail, quantities of grain, stores of figs, jars of olive oil, and counts of livestock. We see the complex bureaucracy of a wealthy, trading empire at work, but the crucial labels are silent. The names of the cities sending the goods, the titles of the officials receiving them, the epithets of the deities to whom offerings were made, all remain locked behind the veil of an unknown language. We see the numbers and the categories, but the names, the stories, and the people are ghosts. This raises a haunting historical question. When the Mycenaean Greeks later took control of Crete around 1450 BCE, they adopted the linear script and adapted it to write their own Greek language. Creating Linear B, they took the tool but discarded the original tongue. Was the Minoan language already fading, or was it deliberately suppressed? The economic lists of Linear A, so full of data yet empty of narrative, offer a stark contrast to the next script on our journey, one whose purpose was never administrative, but profoundly spiritual. Within the silent archives of Linear A lies an artifact so strange it defies every expectation. The disc is not a clay tablet, but a round, fired clay disc, about the size of a small plate, discovered in the ruins of the Minoan palace on Crete. Its surface is a mesmerizing spiral of 241 tiny, raised symbols, pressed into the clay not with a stylus, but with individual stamps. 45 distinct pictographic signs repeat in groups, marching from the outer edge inward toward the center. We see a helmeted head, a bird in flight, a captive with bound arms, a beehive, and a ship. Each image is crisp and clear, a product of a set of reusable seals, a technology for printing that would not be seen again for. This is its first and greatest mystery. Why was this intricate stamped method used for this one object and never again in Minoan Crete? The disc is utterly unique, a solitary message with no sender, no recipient, and no copy. This singularity is what makes it so captivating and so maddening for researchers. Without another example to compare it to, every attempt at decipherment is built on a foundation of guesswork. Is the spiral a narrative to be read from the rim to the center, or from the center outward? Are the groupings of signs words, or perhaps rhythmic lines of a hymn? Over the decades, bold claims have identified its language as an early form of Greek or Luwian from Anatolia, or even a prehistoric form of Basque. Some see it as a religious text, a prayer to a goddess. Others propose it is a legal document, a treaty, or a list of geographic locations. Yet none of these readings have convinced the wider academic community because there is no way to test them against a second text. The disc exists in a vacuum of its own making. It is a locked room with only one page of clues inside. We can admire the artistry of its production, a snapshot of Bronze Age innovation, but the story it tells is for itself alone. This profound isolation, a single voice shouting across the centuries with no echo, leads us to a script that faced the opposite problem, one that was used widely across a vast empire, yet remains just as stubbornly silent. The profound isolation of the disc finds a strange parallel in the humid lowlands of ancient Mexico, where another script is known from just one extraordinary stone. Long before the Maya raised their stelae, the Olmec civilization, often called the mother culture of, may have pioneered writing in the Americas. The evidence is scarce and hotly debated, resting largely on a single palm-sized artifact known as the block. This serpentine slab, dating to around 900 BCE, is inscribed with 62 distinct symbols arranged in clear, horizontal rows. The glyphs themselves are abstract, a mix of shapes resembling insects, thrones, and eyes, but their careful placement suggests something revolutionary, a system with rules. They are not random scratches. The symbols repeat in patterns, and their linear order implies a syntax, a grammar governing how ideas were combined. This small, weathered block could be a fragment of the earliest known writing system in the Western Hemisphere. If the Olmec script is confirmed, it would completely rewrite the timeline of intellectual development in the Americas, proving that the idea of capturing language in visual form emerged here over 2,500 years ago, among the people who first built monumental stone heads and ceremonial centers. What profound thoughts did these foundational pioneers feel compelled to record? Were they noting the names of rulers, the cycles of the sacred calendar, or perhaps myths about the jaguar and the rain? The block is a silent manifesto, a declaration that a great civilization was not just building in stone, but thinking in symbols. This potential new world genesis of writing, emerging from the context of ritual and rulership, stands in stark contrast to an old world script born from a very different necessity, one not of ceremony, but of sheer, desperate survival. Standing sentinel at the mouth of a bustling river was a slab of sandstone that spoke in a forgotten tongue. Known today as the Singapore Stone, this monument once bore an inscription that greeted traders, sailors, and travelers entering the ancient port, a public declaration carved deep into its surface. Likely dating from the 10th to the 14th centuries, the script etched upon it bears a family resemblance to old Sumatran scripts like graceful characters that flowed across the island world of Southeast Asia. Yet this similarity only deepens the mystery. The language it recorded could have been Old Malay, the lingua franca of regional commerce. It might have been Sanskrit, the sacred language of religion and scholarship. Or perhaps it was Javanese, the tongue of the powerful empire. We have the alphabet, but we lost the dictionary, and with it, the entire message. The stone's modern fate is a tragedy for historians. In 1843, British colonial authorities, clearing land for fortifications, made the decision to blast the massive slab apart. Only a few battered fragments were recovered, and today, just one survives in a museum. The inscription we have is heartbreakingly brief, perhaps 50 characters at most, and many of those are worn or damaged. It is like trying to reconstruct a royal speech from a single, torn sentence. What profound statement did this riverside monument make? Was it a declaration of sovereignty from a local ruler, claiming this vital harbor? Could it have been a tax edict for incoming merchant ships, setting the terms of trade? Or was it something more spiritual, a protective invocation to the gods of the sea and safe passage? The stone stood at the crossroads of maritime empires, a silent witness to the ceaseless flow of people and goods that shaped the region. Its destruction represents a profound rupture, a severing of Singapore's tangible link to its deep pre-colonial past. We are left with a ghost of a text, a few cryptic lines that hint at a rich, organized society capable of public writing and monumental display, yet whose voice has been reduced to a faint, illegible whisper. This maritime mystery, born at a busy port and shattered by progress, leads us to a script from a culture defined by its magnificent and deliberate isolation. A world away from the shattered stones of ancient ports lies a book that defies every rule. In the quiet of a university library, a single manuscript from the 15th century holds a secret that has resisted centuries of intense scrutiny. This is the manuscript, a codex of over 200 vellum pages filled from edge to edge with a flowing, unknown script, accompanied by illustrations of plants that do not exist, cosmological charts of unfamiliar constellations, and intricate diagrams of tiny, nude women bathing in strange green fluid. It is a complete and self-contained universe of nonsense, yet one crafted with meticulous, obsessive care. The script itself is composed of elegant, looping characters, arranged in a way that feels profoundly linguistic. Sophisticated statistical analysis confirms this intuition, showing word frequencies and letter patterns that mirror those of a genuine, natural language. It has the skeleton of speech, but the flesh and blood of its meaning are utterly absent. No alphabet, no known tongue from any era or region fits its structure. This has spawned a century of theories as wild as the book's own imagery. Some propose it is a cipher, an encoded version of a known language, perhaps containing alchemical secrets or heretical knowledge its author wished to hide. Others argue it is glossolalia, a stream of conscious text in a constructed language, a private mental exercise given beautiful form. The most tantalizing and most debated idea is that it records a genuine, now extinct language, a vernacular that left no other trace, its entire worldview captured in this one bizarre volume. And then there is the possibility that haunts every cryptographer, the specter of an elaborate Renaissance-era hoax, a meaningless text crafted to fool a wealthy patron. Yet the manuscript's internal consistency, the sheer labor of its creation, argues against a simple fraud. It feels like a message with profound intent, To hold the is to hold a mirror up to our own desire to understand. We see a language, we recognize its patterns, we feel the ghost of communication, but the voice on the other side never speaks. It is the ultimate locked book, its key perhaps forever lost to time. This medieval puzzle, born from the mind of a single enigmatic author, returns us to the collective voice of a forgotten empire, whose own script was stamped not on vellum, but into the earth of every corner it ruled. Amidst the cedar forests and bustling ports of the ancient Levant, a mercantile powerhouse thrived on exchange. The city of Byblos was a nexus where Egyptian papyrus, Aegean pottery, and Mesopotamian goods changed hands, a crucible of cultures and ideas. And from this vibrant crossroads, we have recovered a script that seems to embody that very spirit of connection. The Byblos Syllabary, inscribed on a handful of bronze spatulas and stone tablets around the 17th century BCE, presents a tantalizing puzzle of about 114 distinct signs. Its structure suggests a syllabic system, where each sign represents a consonant-vowel combination, a practical and efficient choice for recording a spoken language. But the most captivating clues are visual. Some of the signs bear a faint, ghostly resemblance to Egyptian hieroglyphs, while others echo the linear forms found on Crete. It is as if the scribes of Byblos looked out at the writing systems arriving on ships from every direction, absorbed the concept, and then invented their own unique script tailored to their own unknown tongue. This places the syllabary at a theoretical crossroads, a potential missing link in the story of how the idea of writing traveled and transformed across the ancient Mediterranean. The language it encodes is a profound mystery, though many scholars suspect it records an early Semitic language, a predecessor to the Phoenician, Hebrew, and Aramaic that would later dominate the region. Yet with only 10 fragmentary inscriptions ever found, progress has hit a wall. How can you decipher a language when you have only a few short sentences to study? Each bronze spatula is like a single page from a merchant's ledger, a customs receipt, or a dedicatory prayer. Were these inscriptions used to track the famed cedar wood exports to Egypt? Did they record treaties with foreign kings, or the names of ships and their captains? In a city whose wealth was built on trade and diplomacy, writing would have been a tool of power and precision. The Byblos Syllabary represents the silent paperwork of empire, the administrative glue that held a commercial network together. Its very existence hints at a sophisticated, literate society operating at the heart of Bronze Age trade, yet its voice is lost beneath the louder, deciphered records of its neighbors. This mercantile script, born in a harbor city, invites us to follow the trade winds further east, to where another great network of exchange fostered a writing system that guarded the secrets of an entire ocean's commerce. A continent away from the Mediterranean crossroads, on the sun-baked plains of South India and Sri, another set of silent marks whispers of a possible bridge across time. Scratched onto the surfaces of burial pottery from the late 2nd millennium BCE onward, long after the great cities of the Indus had faded, are graffiti-like symbols that stop historians in their tracks. These are the so-called megalithic pottery signs, simple yet deliberate markings found on vessels placed with care in stone-lined graves. To the trained eye, some bear an uncanny, haunting resemblance to the characters of the ancient Indus Valley script. A sequence of lines, a loop, a branching shape, they echo a system that flourished over 1,000 years earlier and more than 1,000 miles to the northwest. This resemblance sparks one of the most heated debates in the study of ancient scripts. Are we looking at a genuine survival, a thread of cultural memory where a community, perhaps descended from Indus migrants, kept a form of their ancestral writing alive for centuries? Could it be a conscious revival, a later culture reaching back into a dimly remembered past to borrow symbols of prestige for their own ceremonial purposes? Or is the similarity merely an illusion, a case of simple, universal geometric shapes being invented independently by potters as linguistic marks of ownership, workshop identification, or ritual significance? The stakes of this puzzle are immense. If these scratches constitute even a rudimentary writing system, they could form a direct, tangible link between the enigmatic Indus civilization and the later, historically known cultures of South India, suggesting an unbroken thread of intellectual tradition in the subcontinent. It would mean the idea of writing did not vanish with Harappa, but traveled, transformed, and persisted in a new form. Yet the evidence is frustratingly sparse and open to interpretation. The marks are short, isolated, and lack the clear repetitive patterns of administrative records. They feel personal, perhaps denoting the maker of the pot or the individual it honored. Do they represent names, prayers, or clan symbols? We stand before these funerary vessels, seeing echoes of a grand, urban script now adorning humble rural pottery, and we must ask, is this the faint, enduring whisper of a lost language, or simply the timeless human impulse to make a mark? The question of what cultural knowledge can survive across, carried not in libraries but in the hands of artisans, leads us to a script where the marks were not scratched, but painted with exquisite care, preserving a voice that remains just out of reach. High, on a remote rock face in the mountains of Bulgaria, a sequence of 30 stark lines and curves has been waiting for a reader. This is the inscription, a lonely set of signs carved into the living stone, a message without a context. The characters are clean and linear, suggesting an alphabet or a simple syllabary, a system meant for clear communication. Yet that clarity ends the moment we try to understand it. The script does not comfortably match any known writing system from the region. Its isolation is its greatest mystery. Without associated artifacts or a clear archaeological layer, its date is a wide open question. Some researchers, noting its location in ancient Thracian lands, propose it could be a rare glimpse of a Thracian script, a writing system spoken of by Greek historians but never before seen. Others argue for a much later origin, perhaps a medieval traveler's mark using a cryptic variation of Glagolitic, the early Slavic alphabet. There are even speculative links to runic systems from the north. Each theory paints a different picture of the carver. Was this a boundary marker for a Thracian chieftain, a declaration of territory to any who passed? Could it have been a prayer or a curse, etched by a medieval hermit seeking solitude in the mountains? The very brevity of the inscription amplifies its urgency. With only 30 signs, the message must have been vital, a name, a warning, or a plea deemed important enough to make permanent. We stand before this rock and see the deliberate effort, the desire to speak across time, yet the language chosen is one that time itself seems to have forgotten. It is a solitary voice shouting into the valley, and the echo has long since faded. From this enigmatic, isolated carving in the Balkan wilderness, we journey to a script that faced the opposite fate, one not of isolation, but of imperial embrace, stamped across the heart of a continent. The power of an empire can be etched into the very words it chooses to write. In the 12th century, the people stormed south from the forests of Manchuria, toppling the Liao dynasty and establishing their own Jin Empire, a formidable state that would rule northern China for over a century. To govern this vast, multicultural realm, they needed more than military might, they needed a voice of their own in writing. Drawing inspiration from the scripts of their predecessors and the sophisticated Chinese characters of their southern song rivals, they created a unique writing system. It was a bold declaration of cultural identity, a script that looked familiar yet encoded a language entirely its own. Today, scholars face the intricate puzzle of this imperial creation. Thanks to some surviving bilingual glosses and word lists, a foundation has been laid. We can sound out many of the characters and understand basic terms, especially those related to administration and titles. But this is where the path forward vanishes into fog. The language itself is poorly attested and became extinct, leaving no living descendants to guide us. Without a deep understanding of the grammar, the syntax, the flow of everyday speech, the vast majority of the vocabulary in surviving texts remains a collection of silent symbols. We have historical inscriptions on stone stelae, official documents, and even fragments of poetry, but full comprehension dances just out of reach. This incomplete decipherment leaves a critical historical window only partially open. The Jin dynasty was a sophisticated empire with a complex bureaucracy, a legal code, and a court that rivaled the cultural splendor of the Song. Deciphering the script fully would allow us to hear the empire's own internal dialogue. How did the rulers, originally steppe nomads, adapt Chinese models of governance? What laws did they enact? What disputes did they settle? What diplomatic messages did they send? The script holds the administrative soul of a major power, the detailed minutes of a meeting that shaped the fate of millions, written in a language we can only half understand. It is a testament to how a script can outlive its spoken tongue, becoming both a monument to a people's ambition and a lock on their deepest thoughts. This imperial enigma, born from the fusion of steppe and settled cultures, points us toward an even older and more foundational Chinese puzzle, one that predates the very characters that inspired the script. Was not the first time a northern dynasty faced this challenge. Centuries earlier, their predecessors, the people, had already forged their own linguistic path. When they established the mighty Liao dynasty in the 10th century, ruling over northern China and the steppes for over 200 years, they performed a remarkable act of cultural engineering. They did not simply borrow the Chinese writing system. Instead, they created two entirely new scripts from scratch, known today as the large and small scripts. Both were inspired by the visual principle of Chinese characters, using brush strokes to form square, block-like units. Yet internally, they were designed to capture the sounds and grammar of the completely unrelated language. This was a declaration of intellectual independence, an empire building its own tools for memory. The existence of two scripts adds a layer of fascinating complexity. The large script, developed first, appears more logographic, with each character often representing a whole word. The later small script is more syllabic, a streamlined system better suited for representing the language's sounds. They are not simply different fonts, they are different systems, and they are not mutually intelligible. For modern scholars, this creates a double decipherment puzzle. Progress has been painstaking, reliant on a tiny handful of precious bilingual inscriptions, like the epitaph for a Liao dynasty princess that includes both and Chinese. From these, researchers have slowly mapped a few hundred characters, identifying words for titles, family relations, and numbers. But the phonetic values, the actual sounds of most signs, remain a profound mystery. We can recognize the word for horse or emperor in a text, but we cannot pronounce the name of the emperor who rode that horse. This incomplete key locks away the internal perspective of a vast steppe empire. Chinese historical records describe the Liao dynasty from the outside, often through a lens of cultural difference. The scripts hold the inside story. What did the court historians write about their own conquests and alliances? How did they administer their unique dual system of governing both nomadic tribes and settled agricultural cities? What poetry, laws, or diplomatic correspondence flowed from their own chanceries? Deciphering these scripts fully would allow us to hear the empire's own voice, to understand its self-perception and its sophisticated strategies for ruling a multicultural realm. The large and small scripts are more than writing. They are the unreadable archives of a steppe superpower, a testament to the universal human need to record one's own story in one's own words. From these square characters born on the Asian plains, we find a script of a very different form, one not stamped in clay or carved in stone, but wrought from the most precious of materials. The beauty of silver has always carried a voice. Across Anatolia, in the 8th and 7th centuries before the Common Era, master craftsmen worked this luminous metal into elegant bowls, belts, and personal treasures meant to last. But they did something more than shape the silver, they gave it words. Using an alphabet clearly borrowed from their Greek neighbors, they inscribed short, graceful lines of text onto these precious objects. The letters are familiar, we can read each one aloud: alpha, beta, gamma, yet the language they spell out remains a haunting, half-heard whisper. This is the enigma of the old Phrygian script. Here, the challenge of decipherment is turned inside out. We are not struggling with strange symbols, we hold a clear key to the sounds. The profound mystery lies in what those sounds once meant. Phrygian is a fragmentary branch of the vast European language family, a distant relative with few close connections in the historical record. Without extensive texts, without a rich literary tradition to provide context, linguists are left with only scattered words and phrases, mostly from these brief dedicatory inscriptions. They are like finding a handful of beautifully written postcards, where you can pronounce the sender's name and catch a word like God or King, but the full message, the emotion, the specific plea or promise is lost. What sacred vows were etched onto a silver bowl offered at a temple? Did a finely inscribed belt buckle declare loyalty to a ruler or commemorate a personal triumph? The very value of the objects suggests these were not casual notes, but formal, important statements. The alphabet tells us the Phrygians were connected, engaged in the cultural exchanges of the ancient Near East. But their language, recorded in these gleaming fragments, guards the intimacy of their thoughts, the specific terms of their devotion and identity. It is a ghost language speaking through a perfectly clear megaphone, a reminder that sometimes knowing how to read the words is only the first step toward hearing the voice. Buried in the mud of a quiet Greek lake for over 7,000 years, a wooden tablet waited to rewrite history. Discovered at the Neolithic site of in 1992, this humble piece of timber, carbon dated to around 5,260 before the Common Era, holds a series of carefully engraved linear markings. They are not pictures, but abstract symbols, crosses, lines, and branching shapes arranged in rows. To some researchers, these are not random scratches, but a deliberate attempt at symbolic communication, a form of proto-writing from a time when most of Europe was still in the Stone Age. If this interpretation is correct, the tablet would predate the earliest Mesopotamian cuneiform by over 2,000 years, shattering our traditional timeline for the invention of writing. Yet this bold claim rests on a fragile foundation. The symbols are undeniably intentional, but what was their purpose? Could they be a tally of days, a record of stored goods, or marks denoting clan ownership of the wooden pile-dwelling structures found at the lakeside settlement? Without a larger corpus of similar texts to compare it to, the tablet stands alone, a solitary sentence from a prehistoric language we have no other way to study. The debate is a fundamental one. It forces us to ask what writing really is. Is it the moment simple ownership marks evolve into a system capable of conveying complex, abstract information beyond mere possession? The tablet sits right on that blurred line, a tantalizing glimpse of a cognitive leap that may have happened far earlier and in far more places than we ever imagined. This profound question about the very birth of recorded thought leads us from the wetlands of Neolithic Europe to the sands of a powerful African kingdom, where another early script emerged not from isolation, but from the heart of a vast trading network. Along the sun-drenched banks of the Nile, south of Egypt, a kingdom built its own pyramids and spoke in its own voice. The kingdom of Kush, centered at Meroe in what is now Sudan, was a regional power for centuries, a sophisticated civilization that traded with the Mediterranean and even sacked ancient Egyptian monuments. To govern their realm and honor their gods, they developed the Meroitic script, a graceful, cursive writing system used from around 300 years before the Common Era until about 400 years after. And here lies one of the most tantalizing situations in all of decipherment. Thanks to the discovery of a few bilingual inscriptions with Egyptian text, scholars have successfully cracked the script's phonetic code. We know the sounds of its 23 alphabetic signs. We can look at an inscription on a pyramid wall or a humble pottery shard, an ostrakon, and pronounce the words aloud. Yet the meaning of those words evaporates into silence. The Meroitic language itself is a linguistic isolate, unrelated to any known tongue, ancient or modern. It is as if we have been given a perfectly clear recording of a speech in a language no one has ever heard. We can read the names of powerful rulers like Queen, who famously led her armies against Roman forces. We can identify the names of deities, but the stories that follow those names, the royal decrees, the religious hymns, the legal contracts, and the personal letters remain beautiful gibberish. The script was used for everything from monumental history carved in stone to administrative notes on pottery, documenting the full spectrum of life in a mighty African kingdom. We stand before their pyramids, smaller and steeper than Egypt's, and see the elegant lines of text that cover the chapel walls, knowing they contain the annals of this formidable civilization. What treaties did they write with Rome after their conflicts? What prayers did they offer to their lion-headed god? The Meroitic script is a clear window into a lost world, but the glass is frosted, showing us the shapes of a vibrant culture while obscuring the precise stories they told about themselves. From this partially opened archive on the Nile, our search for lost voices takes us across the water to a group of islands shrouded in their own unique mystery. Carved onto the volcanic rock faces of the Canary Islands, a silent conversation stretches across the ocean. These are the Berber inscriptions left by the Guanche people, an indigenous culture that lived in isolation on these Atlantic islands for perhaps 2,000 years before European contact. The script itself is not a complete mystery in form. Its characters belong to the ancient family of Berber writing used across North Africa by Berber peoples. We can recognize the alphabet, the shapes of the letters, but the language those letters were used to write on the islands is a different story entirely. It is as if someone used the familiar Roman alphabet you are reading now to write a message in a language that has since vanished from the earth. You could sound out the words, but their meaning would be lost. Scholars believe the Guanche language was a Berber dialect, but it evolved in profound isolation, developing its own unique words and expressions cut off from the linguistic changes happening on the mainland. The inscriptions, found in caves and on mountainsides, are often short and enigmatic. They might mark a territory, record a name, or offer a prayer to the volcanic forces that shaped the Guanche world. Each carving is a physical testament to an incredible journey, a story of Berber seafarers who braved the open Atlantic to settle these islands, carrying with them the technology of writing as a vital cultural tool. Then, for centuries, they were alone. What did they choose to record in stone during that long isolation? Were these markings navigational aids for coastal travel between islands or genealogical records of founding families? Did they tell of encounters with the strange, rich environment they found, or rites meant to ensure rain for their barley crops? The script is a stark, elegant bridge between two worlds, the shared Berber heritage of North Africa and the unique island civilization that grew from it. It represents the human need to leave a mark, to say we were here, even when the specific words of that statement fade into the wind. This final script, etched in island stone, brings us to the very edge of the known world and points toward a legend. 3 small clay tablets from Romania hold perhaps the most explosive claim in the story of writing. Known as the tablets, they are unassuming objects, but the symbols pressed into their surface have ignited a firestorm of debate that burns to this day. Discovered in 1961 near the village of, the tablets were found alongside ancient human remains, leading the original excavator to propose a staggering date of around 5,300 years before the Common Era. If this dating were correct, it would mean these markings were made over 2,000 years before the earliest known cuneiform in Mesopotamia, completely upending the traditional narrative of where and when writing was born. The symbols themselves are sparse and simple: crosses, a branching shape, and what looks like a rudimentary animal. The entire corpus of potential writing amounts to just a handful of signs. This extreme brevity is the core of the problem. Are these the fragmented first words of a Neolithic civilization on the Danube, a sacred script used for ritual purposes? Or are they merely ownership marks, decorative patterns, or even, as some skeptics vehemently argue, modern forgeries planted at the site. The controversy extends far beyond academic circles. The tablets were found in the heart of the Balkans, a region with deep and complex national histories. For some, the idea that Europe could have spawned the first writing, long before the civilizations of the Near East, carries a powerful cultural and nationalistic weight. This has turned the tablets into a symbol, a contested trophy in the quest for historical primacy. Scientific attempts to redate the tablets directly have been inconclusive or contested, leaving the questions suspended in a cloud of doubt. They exist in a limbo between artifact and enigma, either a silent revolution in a handful of clay or an archaeological mirage that reflects our own deep desires for origins. After journeying through these 20 silent scripts, from the remote Pacific to the banks of the Danube, we are left surrounded by locked doors. We have seen the elegant glyphs of the administrative lists of Linear A, the imperial decrees of the, and the potential first words at. Each one represents a profound silence, a chapter of the human story where the text is present, but the meaning is absent. So why does this collective silence matter so deeply? It matters because these are not just puzzles for linguists. Every undeciphered script is a universe of lost experience. Within them are the specific names parents called their children, the jokes that made people laugh, the laws that kept order, the prayers offered in times of hardship, and the stories told about how the world began. They contain the granular texture of daily life and the soaring ambitions of empires, all rendered into elegant, mute symbols. Decipherment is more than code breaking. It is an act of ethical recovery. It is the process of giving a voice back to those who have been historically silenced, of restoring agency and complexity to cultures that might otherwise be seen only through the records of their neighbors or conquerors. When we cannot read a people's own words, we risk reducing them to a collection of artifacts and archaeological features, instead of understanding them as thinking, speaking, feeling communities. The quest to crack these codes is a testament to our refusal to let that happen. It is a declaration that every human effort to communicate across time deserves a listener. As long as these scripts remain unread, a part of our shared human history remains in the shadows, waiting for the light of understanding to finally reach it. A silent script is a world erased. When an ancient writing system remains unreadable, we lose far more than a collection of words. We lose the specific texture of a people's inner life, their jokes and lullabies, their market disputes and marriage vows, their private fears and public triumphs. That silence creates a black hole in the human story, swallowing not just events, but consciousness itself. Decipherment, then, is the ultimate act of historical recovery. It is the process of pulling a civilization back from the edge of oblivion, of restoring its own voice so it can speak for itself, rather than being defined solely by the pottery it left behind or the accounts written by its rivals. The stakes are nothing less than the reclamation of memory. Consider the monumental impact of Linear B for decades. The Mycenaean palaces of Greece were seen as a mysterious, possibly Greek culture. Then the script on their clay tablets was cracked, revealing an early form of the Greek language. In an instant, the timeline of Greek history was pushed back centuries, proving a direct linguistic and cultural continuity with the world of Homer. A civilization known only by its architecture suddenly had administrative records, lists of chariot wheels and perfumed oil, and the names of its gods. It was given a voice. This is the transformative power of a single decipherment. It can rewrite chapters of history we thought were settled. Now, apply that potential to the Indus Valley script. This civilization built meticulously planned cities with sophisticated plumbing and widespread trade, yet we know almost nothing of its governance, its religion, or the thoughts of its citizens. Cracking that code could answer foundational questions. Was it a rigid theocracy or a collection of merchant oligarchies? Did it have a concept of kingship, or was it organized in a way modern historians have never considered? The answers locked in those brief inscriptions could redefine our understanding of how urban society itself can function. Every undeciphered script holds similar revolutionary potential. The tablets could reveal how the people of it conceptualized their incredible voyage across the Pacific and their relationship with the towering. The Proto-Elamite ledgers might expose the economic engine that powered early state formation in Iran. These puzzles are not merely linguistic games, they are acts of historical justice. For cultures known primarily through the records of those who conquered them or traded with them, decipherment offers a chance to reclaim their narrative, to present their perspective on events. It restores agency to the silent. It corrects the record. So what truths about human resilience and ingenuity are still waiting in the clay and stone? The quest to find them is now being supercharged by tools our predecessors could never have dreamed of. The silent stone and clay are no longer speaking only to the patient human eye. A new era of listening has begun, powered by technologies that can perceive patterns in the noise where we once saw only mystery. Artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms are now being trained on these ancient scripts, not to guess at meanings, but to perform a kind of superhuman pattern recognition. These systems can analyze thousands of inscriptions in moments, mapping the precise frequency of every symbol, tracking how often certain signs appear together, and identifying subtle grammatical structures that might take a scholar a lifetime to notice. They are not deciphering, but they are illuminating the hidden architecture of the language, providing a data-rich map for human intuition to explore. At the same time, the very surfaces that bear these scripts are yielding new secrets. High-resolution spectral imaging can detect traces of ink or pigment long faded from view. Three-dimensional laser scanning can capture every microscopic groove and wear pattern on a clay tablet, allowing researchers to virtually unwrap a folded document or see the order in which a stylus pressed each line, revealing the scribe's own thought process. These tools turn a single, fragile artifact into a limitless digital object that can be shared, rotated, and studied by experts across the globe simultaneously. This technological leap is matched by a revolution in collaboration. Online databases now aggregate every known example of a script, like the Indus Valley symbols or linear A, creating a shared corpus that any researcher can access. A linguist in Tokyo, a computer scientist in California, and an archaeologist in Crete can now work on the same puzzle in real time, pooling expertise in ways that break down the traditional silos of academia. Perhaps the most futuristic hope lies in the intersection of archaeology and genetics. As ancient DNA analysis becomes more refined, it may one day be possible to link the physical remains of a population at a specific site, like those of the Minoans or the people of the Indus Valley, to known language families through demographic movement and migration patterns. This would not provide a translation, but it could offer a crucial hint, narrowing the search from every possible language to a probable few. No single tool is a magic key that will suddenly make the glyphs recite poetry or the Proto-Elamite tablets sing of kings. The path to a true decipherment will always require a brilliant, human spark of insight, a moment where the patterns click into place and a long-dead language begins to breathe again. But what this new multidisciplinary approach does is amplify that potential for insight. It transforms the quest from the work of a solitary genius in a dusty library to a coordinated, global endeavor, a kind of scientific crowdsourcing applied to history's greatest mysteries. The silent scripts now have an audience of millions, armed with the collective processing power of the entire digital age. So, as we stand before this panorama of 20 unreadable histories, what is the ultimate lesson in their collective silence? It is a reminder that every mark made by a human hand is an act of faith in the future, a belief that someone, someday, will understand. Our relentless drive to crack these codes is the fulfillment of that ancient faith, a promise across that their stories still matter and that we are still listening. The silent glyphs and unreadable lines we have encountered are not merely historical footnotes. They are profound reminders of a humbling reality, that for all the libraries we have filled and archives we have digitized, entire chapters of the human story are written in a language we have yet to learn. Each of these 20 scripts, from the administrative seals of the Indus Valley to the wooden tablets of, represents more than a failed translation. They are evidence of a universal and timeless impulse, the deep-seated need to speak across the ages, to tell others who we were, what we valued, and how we saw the world. These silent records transform our understanding of history itself. It is not a complete and polished book sitting on a shelf, but a vast, fragmented manuscript recovered from the ashes, filled with eloquent passages right beside heartbreaking gaps and tantalizingly missing pages. The empty spaces are not voids, they are invitations. The enduring mystery of these undeciphered scripts is not a mark of scholarly failure, but a testament to the endless frontier of human curiosity. It is a continuous call to collaboration, to bring together linguists and computer scientists, archaeologists and historians in a shared project of recovery. Every unbroken code is a locked door, and behind it waits not just data, but a voice. Perhaps that door will be opened by a sudden, brilliant insight from a researcher noticing a pattern everyone else missed. It may be unlocked by a future technological leap, an algorithm that can perceive connections invisible to the human mind. One day, a key will turn, and a world we thought was lost forever will begin to speak its name, share its stories, and reclaim its place in our collective memory. Until that moment arrives, these scripts stand as quiet, powerful monuments. They mark the current limits of our knowledge, yes, but more importantly, they illuminate the boundless potential for discovery that still lies ahead. They remind us that the past is never truly finished speaking, and that the next great revelation might be waiting in the next fragment of clay, the next scan of a weathered stone, or the next shared idea in a global conversation. If this journey into the silent histories of our world has captivated you, consider subscribing for more explorations into the past's greatest enigmas. And we would love to hear your perspective. Which of these undeciphered scripts do you believe holds the most transformative secret, the one that could truly reshape our understanding of the human journey?